What's going on? This is your man John Fortune, your host of the Frustrated Fan Sports Show. And today, while we're still waiting on Jaden Daniels' status when it comes to playing in the Chicago game, I think I'm leaning to more that he won't play, but they haven't announced him being out yet. So with that being said, you know, I wanted to come on here today to talk about something that just recently happened, which was the release of Jamin Davis. Not too long ago. I think it was like probably on Tuesday or something like that. But either way, the Jamin Davis thing really signifies at how bad we were drafting for a very long time, and how it's sad to see that there was so much that could have been done that clearly wasn't done properly, that put so many people and so many things and put the franchise behind the eight ball for so much. Should have been poor drafting, poor development, or just letting guys walk away or trading guys. You know, so when you really analyze it, it's so crazy because I remember I did a short where I said, you know, where I talked about the whole Jamin Davis thing when they traded away Jahan Dotson, and I made it a point of saying we would have had 5 failed first-round picks in 5 years. And it's crazy because at the time that I made the post, everybody thought that I was out of my mind when I was talking about it. And I kept saying, like, if y'all look at the guys that came, but like, if you think about some of the guys, Jamin Davis, he's not going to be a guy that looks like he's working out. They're trying to make him play a different position. Then you look at somebody like Emmanuel Forbes, he's struggling. And over the course of this drafting, we've seen a lot of this stuff. And it's sad because it wasn't Jamin Davis's fault that he was taken in the first round. The problem was that he was taken too early, and there were a bunch of other linebackers that could have been taken in his spot. But that seems like that's the whole thing of this. Like when we talk about the draft inconsistency, so I'll just go back to 2017, right? So from 2017, no, we can go back to 2016. From 2016 to 2023, that's 8 drafts, right? 8 drafts. Of those 8 drafts, we only have 3 first-round picks still on the team. 3. 8 drafts, only 3 first-round picks. And of those 3 first-round picks, next year, 2 of them are up in the air in Jonathan Allen and Emmanuel Forbes. So that means come the next year, we could incorporate the 2024 draft, and we will only have, out of 9 drafts, 2 first-round picks that is still on the team. That is probably the most horrifying piece of information that could ever be done or could ever be known, right? And again, it wasn't Jamin Davis's fault, but it was Ron Rivera's fault. It was prior to him Bruce Allen's fault and Dan Snyder's fault. And it's so sad to see us go down a path in which we're seeing so many players just absolutely fail here. And Jamin Davis is the next in line. Again, you're talking about in that 2021 draft, there were so many linebackers in that draft. Now, for y'all who've been following this channel for the longest, the guy that I focused on the most during that draft period was a guy that I said was the best fit for Jack Del Rio's defense. A guy who I knew for a fact could play in Jack's defense and change the outcome of what was going on in Washington, especially at the linebacker position. And that guy was Nick Bolton. And everybody, I kept saying it over and over and over again, Nick Bolton, Nick Bolton, Nick Bolton, Nick Bolton. And then there's also, then you had Joker, who was everybody else's pick. But in that draft, I remember saying that there were more guys in that draft. And I'm going to put a link in the description of the guys that I actually thought that Ron was going to take. Like, there were players in that 2021 draft that I thought Ron was going to take, and he didn't take these guys. But again, you're talking about these guys, like, those linebackers that was in that draft. It was Nick Bolton. Joker was in that draft. Ohio State had two guys coming out. It was Pete Werner and Baron Browning. You had Ernest Jones the fourth was in that draft, who just got traded. You had Joseph Asai was in that draft. Tony Fields was in that draft. And I think Nick Neiman was in that draft as well. But there were a lot of guys that was better than Jamin in that draft. And I remember when they took Jamin Davis, I'll put a link in the description below for that. I remember when they took him, I said that there were better linebackers in the draft. Not only that, I said, hell, they could have still gotten Jamin Davis in the draft, but they could have still picked one of these other linebackers before they got Jamin Davis, because Jamin Davis wasn't better than any of these other linebackers that was in the draft that year. And it's crazy because it's so wild to see so many guys that are not on this team. And, you know, I know everybody says that the draft is like a big crapshoot and all this type of stuff. But you got to remember that it is a crapshoot, but it's also when people are selecting guys that they know they're reaching for. You know, Antonio Gibson, yeah, it was a quality back, but we all knew that Ron reached for him in the second round. Like that was a reach that wasn't needed. You know, so there are things, when you think about Jahan Dotson, you know, Jahan Dotson, we was for certain that Washington would take Kyle Hamilton, and they chose not to. They took Jamin Davis instead. I mean, Jahan Dotson instead. You know, when you sit up there and you look at, hell, even the Jamin Davis draft, remember, we moved from, what was it, I think 7, because they said that, no, we moved from 11. And they said, well, we moved down because Drake London was gone. But Olave was there. There was still guys that was there that were quality wide receivers. But you moved all the way down. You got the opportunity to take Kyle Hamilton. You don't take him. You take Jahan Dotson. I think you moved back again and took Jahan Dotson. It's crazy to see a guy like Jamin Davis, who was just put in a bad spot, who fans all saw as a developmental guy, who fans all knew wasn't the best, one of the best linebackers in the draft. It's sad to see him go the way of so many different draft picks. You're talking about the 2020 draft, there's nobody here from the 2020 draft. 2017, you're talking about Jonathan Allen is the only guy still on this team. 2018, Deron Payne is the only guy still on this team. 2019, Terry McLaurin is the only guy still on the team. 2020, nobody. 2021, what? Cosme, St. Juice, De'Ami Brown, and I think Derek Forrest. I think those are the people those are the only ones that's left on the team. Wait a minute, was Chris Paul? No. Chris Paul was Chris Paul 21 or was he 22? Chris Paul was 21. Chris Paul was 21. So Chris Paul is the backup. But, I mean, still, you're talking about that. That's a lot of guys. I think, hell, Ricky Stromberg is gone. Braden Daniels is gone. I think Cheeseman is gone. Yeah, Cheeseman is gone. I mean, there are so many guys that were drafted here, and they were either the wrong pick or they were poorly picked by a staff that didn't know what was going on. And I don't know what to say beyond this, man. It's crazy to see this. But not only that, prior to the offseason, and this is where you can kind of get mad at Adam Peters as well. Like, prior in the offseason, everybody was talking about Jamin Davis being released. Everybody was talking about, hey, they didn't pick up his extension, so they should go ahead and just release him. And then they tried to convert him to this edge player. And early in camp, I'm pretty sure everybody saw, even in the preseason, you saw that Jamin Davis wasn't going to be an edge guy. He just wasn't going to make it as an edge guy. Everybody knew that. Everybody saw that. And Adam Peters still chose to move forward. And here you are now. Season is moving on, and you set up there and let him stay on the roster, take a roster spot from somebody else when you could have just given it to somebody else. And here we are now, released. And it's one of those things where it was just a huge waste. It was a huge waste. And it's sad to see that this go down that path of where we just had first round pick after first round pick after first round pick just fail. And here we are now. Emmanuel Forbes is the final of Ron's first round picks. And more than likely he won't be here either come next year. And like I said, again, you're talking about 8 drafts and only 3 guys are still on the team. Out of 8 drafts, only 3 guys that were picked in the first round is still on the team. That's crazy. And we're not talking about these guys leaving due to free agency or anything like that. We traded them. Like, we traded Chase Young, traded Dwayne Haskins, traded Montez Sweat, traded Jahan Dotson, released Jamin Davis, and now you got Emmanuel Forbes, who might not be here either. So, yeah, y'all, it's crazy, man. I remember at one time the talk was about how bad our second round picks were. Now we're at a state where we're talking about how bad our first round picks is. Even though Jaden Daniels is going to make it up for us, it's still a sad, sad thing to see when you see that we fail in so many consecutive years on first round picks. It's sad. Y'all tell me what y'all think. How do y'all feel about our our first round picks, and how many of them failed? And how many of them were you expecting to actually make it? Being as though they were picked in the first round, how many of them did you really think was going to make it? Y'all tell me what y'all think. Other than that, this has been your man John Fortune, and this has been the Frustrated Fan Sports Show.